Good afternoon to everyone on the call. Thank you, and again, for joining us for today's Blogger and Media Roundtable. My name is Major Tanya Stokes. I am with USAREC Recruiting Command, Public Affairs, and today we have with us Major General Alan Batschelet, U.S. Army Recruiting Command, Commanding General. He will discuss and take questions on today's topic, the future of recruiting. Before we open the floor for the opening statement from Major General Batschelet, we have a few housekeeping items. Once the floor is open for questions, please state your name and blog and organization affiliation clearly. Also, we request that you keep your questions brief and to the point. If you are not participating in the conversation, please keep your phone muted to eliminate any background noise. With that being said, Major Jerry Batschelet, we open the floor for you for your opening statement.
Okay, great. Thanks. So thanks for those that made the time to join us today, and we appreciate your interest in all things Army recruiting. I want to have a brief opening statement. I actually have a long one, but I'm not going to read it all to you. Then maybe we can just go to some conversation. But we've been trying to get the word out here that the all-volunteer force and the great service it has provided the country over the last 40-some years is at some risk due to multiple factors, many of them being societal, and that the quality of the force and trying to deliver on the Chief of Staff's vision of Force 2025 that he's described is going to require continued and perhaps enhanced or reinvigorated investment in the all-volunteer force to get that quality. And I've kind of been laying out the discussion in a perspective that at one point we had national service or a draft in the here in our country, and we decided about 40 years ago that in order to improve the Army and all the armed services that we would go to an all-volunteer force. And so that kind of the decision about the two broad ways that you can field armies or your armed services is either to have some form of national service or to professionalize, and we've decided to professionalize. So absent another discussion about which is the best alternative or best approach for the country, we have to then be willing to make the investments in the all-volunteer force that are necessary in order to maintain the quality and the readiness that we currently seek, and in the case of the Army, actually raise the quality of the force in accordance with the Chief of Staff's vision for Force 2025. So there's some just to hit a couple of key points about some of the issues that we're facing. Recently, there's been some surveys that have pointed to the fact that the Army is becoming a family business. It's sort of a legacy kind of atmosphere or not atmosphere, I suppose, but result where 79% of our recruits have a family member who has served in the military, and that number seems to be climbing. Don't know what to make about that necessarily, but it could be troubling in that we're not as representative of the country as we would like to be or think that that we should be. And then another major issue is young people's ability to meet our eligibility requirements. And many of you are probably familiar that only 3 in 10 of young Americans are currently eligible in the age group that we kind of focus on, those 17 to 24-year-olds. And we think that trend's pretty clearly declining, and that by 2020, that eligibility number could be down to 2 in 10. And then, we're some growing reluctance to allow recruiters into schools so that we can tell our story and present, a career of military service to young people. We're finding there's pockets of resistance and where access is being denied, and that's not a growing trend. It's not growing quickly, but we do see a kind of an erosion, if you will. Maybe that's a better way to think about it, is an erosion of willingness to afford us access, and it's not just to the Army, but it's to all of the services. And then, there's conversations about the country and its financial status and the economy, and can we afford this all-volunteer force, and that, people are expensive. And so there's discussions about compensation packages for the future of those who choose to serve that are beginning to have some negative consequences or at least more probing questions by applicants about, where's the future of compensation going if I do choose to make the Army a career, and can I count on the service, to be one where I can have a good quality of life. And then, we're trying to find ways that we balance all of these competing demands and the Army's value proposition so that we avoid the environment that we had back in 06, 07, 08 when we were trying to grow the Army quickly, and we were paying significant sign-on bonuses. And unfortunately, what we ended up doing was purchasing service and not really engendering a commitment or those that were really bought into the Army as a institution whose values they believed in and adopted. So a number of people that were in those categories, those that really wanted to serve, continued to join. But to get those additional numbers, we found ourselves in a position of buying service, and that probably wasn't the approach we would want to take long term. And then finally, there's as the economy is beginning to improve, youth unemployment is going down, and we are finding ourselves in a competition for high-quality talent. And so we're looking for a number of enterprise approaches and with multi-component solutions, Army Reserve and the National Guard, and then the regular Army. And we're making some fairly significant investments in modernizing how we go about recruiting, the tools that we put in the hands of recruiters, how we select recruiters so that we have the right soldiers out representing the Army, being the Army's ambassadors. So a lot going on in the sessions and recruiting business right now, and some significant challenges, but also some very bright signs on the horizon that we're going to be successful in getting the quality and the volume that we seek in order to deliver on the Chief's vision of Force 2025. So that's probably the key points that I wanted to make as an opening, and then turn it over to whoever would like to, if that generated any questions, open it up for your observations or questions to me.
All right. Thank you, sir. We will now open the floor for questions. We will begin with Phyllis.
With who? Did you see my name?
Phyllis Miller, yes, ma'am.
Yes. Hi. Phyllis Zimbler Miller, MrsLieutenant.blogspot.com. I just want to say something before I start, that I actually have a book called, it's on Amazon, called How to Succeed in College, and I have a section in there in which I suggest a military career. And if you want later, I can send you the Word document. But I personally think, as a journalist, that many, many Americans do not understand anything about our troops. Anyway, back to my question. What does it mean that only 3%, 3 out of 10 are eligible to serve? Could you go into that a little bit more, please?
Yeah, sure. So, you have to be kind of broadly, as you're very familiar, I think it sounds like, and I've looked at your background too, so some of this will be very familiar to you. So you have to be eligible morally, academically, or cognitively, and then physically. Those are the three broad categories. And so a number of individuals, and in the 17 to 24-year-old population, there's 30-some million of those. I'm not talking about eligibility from a perspective of I would prefer to go to college versus joining the Army. I'm just talking about everyone in that cohort, those 17 to 24-year-olds, the 30 million of them, would they be eligible to join the Army? And today, given the filters that we have in place that we use to screen and select young people when they want to join us, primarily young people, only 3 in 10 would meet those eligibility requirements. So obesity forms a big part of it, the disqualification, and that's the growing trend. I mentioned to you that the number was going to 2 in 10 by 2020. That erosion from 3 to 2 in 10 is primarily driven by the obesity rates that are prevalent in that group of 17 to 24-year-olds. So I hesitate to give you statistics because they vary up and down fairly frequently, but moral disqualifications make up a good part of it. We have criminalized a number of activities in our society that used to not be criminalized, and so we lose a lot of young people there. And we aren't granting waivers. If you have misbehavior in your background, we are able to, the quality and the volume is still high enough that we're not putting waivers in place for young people. And I don't want to say that as a blanket statement. We do consider applications with waivers, but very reluctant to approve those, although they are still available. And then the cognitive. So what we're seeing is an erosion or academic qualifications. We're seeing an erosion in academic qualifications of the young people that we are engaging with. And that's reflective of declining high school graduation rates, some of the challenges that we're seeing across the country with young people even just being able to complete high school or an equivalent. All of those trends are in a downward path. So does that help?
Yes, but what I'm curious is, has the military considered boot camps for these people who really do want to serve? I know in World War II, all those people who tried to figure out ways to get around the requirements so they could serve. So, like a camp in which they go through weight training, et cetera. I mean, does the military consider that at all?
We do. In fact, we have a small program that we run that allows us to bring in some people that are on the margins of, say, physical fitness, that not a high volume. The truth of the matter is we haven't been very successful with that. We do have a program where if English is not your first language, you can apply to come in, and if you're otherwise highly qualified, we'll send you to a course to improve your English skills. But again, that volume is very small because we haven't found a great need for that. But the physical one is probably the one that offers the most opportunity. Unfortunately, what we've found is that if you come in outside of our current standards of body fat and fitness standards, the likelihood of you completing your first term enlistment is pretty low. Those individuals that we are able to bring in, they'll meet the requirements initially. They'll get through basic training in AIT, but then they struggle at their first unit of assignment, and we lose them at a much higher rate than we do, say soldiers to injury or that kind of thing.
Interesting. Thank you for the information.
Okay. Next we have Lisa Fernando.
Good afternoon, General. Thank you so much for this conference call. I'm Lisa Fernando with Army News Service. I was wondering if you could just talk specifically about some of the steps that you're taking to compete, like you mentioned, as the economy is improving, how you're the steps you're taking to make the Army a really great choice for young Americans.
Yeah, so the message to young Americans is relatively unchanged. The Army's value proposition from the perspective of good pay, benefits, the GI Bill, tuition assistance while you're in the Army. So that message has been consistent and it resonates with young people. Although because they are seeing other options as the economy gets better, that value proposition is being challenged. But so from that perspective, really no change. We've sort of redoubled, if you will, or tripled, I don't know. I'm putting more emphasis on reaching out to educators across the country. So we've been partnering with like the National School Board Association, the Career and Technical Advisors Association, the National Secondary School Principals, big organizations like that, to inform and educate them about all of the potential careers that one can have inside of the Army. We talk to them about March to Success. I don't know if you're familiar with March to Success.
No.
So March to Success is a free program offered online that is a academic remediation program, and it's free to anyone who wants to use it, teachers and educators, to help build the skills of young people that might be struggling in a particular area. It's very effective, and one of the benefits of it to an educator is, of course, it's free, and then secondarily to the individual, you can take 7 SAT or ACT practice tests for free as you participate in the program. So trying to make educators aware of tools like that. We have partnerships with private industry. So there's an enlistment option today that you can, it's called PAYS, Partnership for America's Youth. and you can put that into your contract, and when you, let's say you have it written into your contract that when you finish your enlistment, you'd like to work for Home Depot. So Home Depot is partnered with us, and as that young person leaves the service, they are guaranteed an interview. Not a job, but they're guaranteed an interview with one of our PAYS partners. So those are the kind of things that we're trying to educate those that are third-party influencers like guidance counselors and parents on what are the additional advantages of service, because we think that there's just a not misunderstanding so much as there just is an unknowing of all of the other benefits of service. And because with the adult influencer is the key in the young person's making a decision. We think, I don't know how we got this statistic, and you could challenge me on it, and I would be hard-pressed to back it up, but somewhere the majority of the decision, or we say 80% of a young person's decision, is influenced by whether or not to join the Army, is influenced by an adult influencer of whom they trust, either a mom, dad, aunt, uncle, guidance counselor, parent, teacher, coach, someone like that. So we're working harder to try and educate those key individuals so that they understand the benefits of service, so that they can be more likely to make a recommendation to a young person to consider joining. Does that get at the question?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much.
All right. Next we have Cal Janner.
I'm sorry, I didn't have a question at this moment.
Okay.
Okay. Do we have anyone else to call in? Okay. Phyllis or Lisa, do you guys have any follow-up questions?
I just wanted to say something about the fact that I'm not surprised at all that the 79% number of people currently in the military have recruiting, coming in, already have someone in the military. Again, I think that in America, the military is totally not understood. I do a lot of blog posts about this. So in the greater scheme of things, not just high school principals and college advisors, how is the military getting out the word to the American public of how important it is to have a volunteer qualified military?
Yes, that's a great question. So we're currently in the middle of evaluating our marketing and advertising campaigns and the tools that we're using to try and get that, to educate the American public about that. Now, you won't be surprised to know that we've taken some reductions in our budget to do those kinds of activities, along with the declining resources that are available to the Army. This particular, that ability to get that word out is also had to take its share of reductions, and so we're challenged at the moment. Frankly, we know we recognize that it's an issue. The Chief of Staff, you're probably familiar with Soldier for Life program. He's introduced that. We're trying to partner more closely with organizations like Rotary, Kiwanis, Lions, and other civic organizations, the veteran service organizations, to keep them informed. In fact, I just reached out to the American Legion and VFW here recently, along those same lines at the national level of leadership, seeking their assistance in helping us get the word out and to re-educate the public. In some senses, you have a gap in a generational service. So kind of an insular number of people that have served, sort of associated closely with the Army, and then this sort of a gap of understanding between those that haven't served and the fact that we haven't had a broad, there hasn't been a large number of people serve for many, many years. So there's a gap in understanding that's opened up. So we're trying to get some of those who've served in the past to, more aggressively help us get the word out. And some of the organizations that I mentioned are those that we're trying to partner with.
Thank you very much. Yes, I think it's a major problem. And if you're willing to share your emails through this email list, I'd love to just kind of send a couple of ideas to you.
Okay, sure. We'll be happy to do that. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay. Do we have any more questions?
Yeah, I have some questions. This is Lisa Ferdinando again. You outlined a number of challenges. Which one is your biggest challenge to recruiting? And maybe if you want to also talk about how you are recruiting to face the challenges in with all the evolving threats and, with the Army of the future, the threats that the Army will be facing.
Okay, let me take the first part, and then maybe you can ask me the second part again after I finish this one, because I suspect I'll lose focus on the second part. But
okay.
it's hard to say which category of ineligibility is the most troubling. The one that's the most of growing concern that's in our face is the unfitness or the obesity challenge, because it's really growing. I won't say exponentially, but it's growing very quickly. But probably the most but that's one that we can, as a society and even as the Army, we can deal with. I mean, there are ways to, as you know, you can get fit. You put your mind to it, and you can lose the weight, and we can get you fit. The less impactful from a volume perspective is the academic qualifications, but that's the one that's most difficult to overcome. As a society, and I know we're doing a number of things, nationally with Common Core and No Child Left Behind, and we recognize it's a problem, but that's the one that's very difficult and takes significantly more time to address. So I think in the main, to answer your question, that one's the more worrisome one for me, at least from my perspective. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you very much, sir.
And so that's back to that March to Success, and I didn't talk about there's some other programs that we have out there that are focused with mentoring and coaching young people that the Army's involved with, all in an attempt to try and offset that, the erosion of, there's statistics here, we track GT scores. You're probably familiar with it. You get a GT score when you take the Armed Forces Qualification Test or the ASVAB, and we don't know if it's a trend yet or not, but we have seen a downturn in the average of the GT score for all applicants that have taken I shouldn't say applicants, of all those who have taken the test, and there appears to be a downturn in the GT score. Now, what we don't know is whether or not that, the test needs to be renormed, because there's times when that happens. It hasn't been renormed for some time, so there's some question about what's the proximate cause, but we're watching that very closely.
Okay.
What was the second part of the question now? I'm sorry.
Sir, I was asking about how you are recruiting to deal with the complex threats of the world, of the future.
So one of the things that we're trying to do is make sure that we have a force that is diverse, and because America has, representatives of people from around the world, really. And so, we try and find ways to get after the cultural skills, the language skills that, those who have come to the States offer, and they're willing to, and pair that up with their willingness and eligibility to serve. So Asian Pacific Islanders, Taiwanese, we want to be as diverse as the country is as a goal. We don't have numbers associated with that, but we think it's important to be reflective of society. And then, fortunately for us, that affords us an opportunity to talk to people that, come from areas of the world where we might find ourselves involved again. If you remember, there was a program during Afghanistan called the 09 Limas that were focused on finding individuals who had specific language skills. Those people, again, fortunately, were here in the States. They were available to us. And so we still look for those sorts of categories, people with very unique skills that can help make the Army more diverse and robust from a readiness perspective. So we know where they live. We track that kind of thing. We track demographics very closely. We use Census Bureau information and some other sources to help us find where they live and work. And then we make a concerted effort to, go talk to them. And it's not necessarily hard. It's not hard in the sense of knowing where they are. It's hard work to go find them and get in front of the right people, and then, of course, determine their willingness and eligibility. So a lot of steps involved to, trying to find that person who's willing to join us that meets all those qualifications. That's probably maybe a little bit rambling, but we do seek them out. But again, I think it's important to know there's not goals. We just recognize that it's important to be representative of the country.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
Do we have any more questions?
No, thank you.
Okay. Well, I'd like to say thank you to everyone for a great question and participation, sir. Do you have any closing remarks?
No, I don't think so. We appreciate your interest, and I think we pointed out that there's this, Phyllis in particular. You made mention that the country is, I won't say misinformed, but rather uneducated, and I share that sentiment. And so your willingness to participate with us today and help get that story out, for all of you, we very much appreciate that.
All right. Well, thank you, sir, for speaking to us today on such an important issue to the Army as well as our nation. Again, thank you for your participation, and that ends our roundtable.
Thank you.